It doesn't matter what race the earliest members of the Christian church was. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what their race was. It doesn't matter that they were non-black. It does not matter. God doesn't care. I hear all the time, Black Americans especially, say things like, it's a white man's religion. Christianity is a white man's religion. No, it's not. White men were not in that region when Christ was around. They weren't in that region when the early desert fathers were around. They were not there. So it is not a white man's religion. I think we come up with so many convoluted reasons for why we don't want to submit our wills to God. We don't want to obey God. And this is just one of those reasons. The early characters of the Bible, the early members of the Bible, the people of the Bible were not black. And so therefore we have our justification for why we should not follow God, someone who is outside of these human concepts and constructs. To me, it just speaks volumes to the fact that so many of us are self-consumed, full of pride, so much so that we are trying to bring down God, this universal, uncreated being, into our world and trying to justify whether or not he is real or is not real based on our social and cultural configurations and categories. I think for those of you who believe that, you need to take a step back for a second and really think to yourselves exactly who do you think you are, really, to say, God is not God because the people of the Bible didn't look like me, so therefore somehow God isn't God, or I'm not going to worship or follow God solely because the people during the biblical age, the people that the Bible is written regarding, that they were not black. If you don't realize that is pride, that is conceited pride, that is, dare I say, maybe even self-deification, that it's about you, that somehow God needs to meet you at your level, and if he doesn't fit your standards, then he is unacceptable to you. I think you need to think about that one again. And while I'm on this topic of the church and what should be and should not be allowable in it, I have been thinking lately also the issue of the pride flag coming into the church, queer ideologies coming into the church, and how inappropriate it is that Christian churches are actually acquiescing to this ideology and this culture, that they're giving in to it and allowing it to come into the church. And this is an issue to me for a few reasons. I believe the church, and I'm speaking broadly, but I know you can kind of narrow this down to Western churches, specifically American churches, who are acquiescing to this ideology. I think they're way out of line. I think that they forget exactly who it is that they are supposed to serve and exactly what is the point of the church here on earth. So what is the point of the church? Why do we have church? What do we need it for? The church serves as, well, one, it's God's temple. It's a temple to God here on earth. But the church allows us to go up and experience God, to experience the divine. That's what the church is here to do. It's a little piece of divinity down here on earth, and we get to sort of commune with heaven in church when we go into church and we worship. That's what we're doing. We're connecting to the divine when we're there. So the church is supposed to be this kind of conduit that allows us human beings to be close to God here on earth in our mortal bodies. That's the purpose of it. So it truly strikes me as odd whenever I see churches allowing in worldly ideologies, worldly beliefs and traditions and values and symbols. It completely defeats the purpose of what church is supposed to be. and why church is here. Church is not here to reflect the world. It's here to be a reflection of God in the world for us, not the other way around. And this is, again, this gets back to us wanting or believing in our mind that we need to somehow make God acceptable to us and not the other way around. Like, we don't need to make ourselves acceptable to him. He needs to be acceptable to us. I think there's a lot of us out there who has it in our heads that we're God, that we're actually God, and we get to set the parameters for how this is going to go in church. So yeah, I think you have a lot of these people who want God to make himself acceptable to us and come down to our level, when really it's supposed to be the other way around. And it's most shocking because it's Christians who are doing this. It's Christians who are part of the queer community, Christians who are sympathetic, which is fine, but I think you have to draw a line somewhere, who are allowing these other Christians and people who, sympathize with Christianity to bring in their beliefs into the church, defeating the purpose of church. The church today has gotten very lazy and lackadaisical and has forgotten who it is that we're supposed to be serving. The church today is allowing in other idols, frankly, pride flags, interfaith symbols. I went into this Catholic cathedral in New York City, and they had interfaith symbols up. They had like the Buddhist symbols and like Hinduism symbols in there, and I'm just thinking, what is that? What does the very first commandment say? That's what I was thinking to myself, like, this shouldn't be here. And I understand where these, church administrators are coming from. They're trying to be sympathetic to human beings and understanding and loving. But I think their idea of what love is getting a little polluted. Their idea of love has turned into passivism. They're passive when it comes to the faith, and they're just kind of letting in anyone under this guise of Christian love and Christ-like love. I think they're getting it all wrong. But when you go to church, you are supposed to be at the door. At the door when you get to church, you're supposed to be dropping everything about yourself, your personality, your ideas, your values, your symbols, your traditions, all of that stuff. You leave it at the door. You're supposed to empty yourself out when you're coming into church to be filled with Christ. That's why you go to church. So you're supposed to leave all of that outside the church. It's not supposed to come into church. We're not bringing the world to God. We're trying to have God come down to us and be with us for a moment when we're in church. So at the door, there's this expectation, albeit unspoken, to die to self, to empty yourself out, leave the world behind, and then step into worship. These people are not coming into worship empty. They're coming half full. They're coming with their own idols and their own gods attached to them, and they're coming into church and they're trying to make God now acquiesce to them, like they're the God. But they're not. It is not their temple. They are not God. It doesn't have to reflect them and their beliefs and their ideas. It has to reflect God. And it just goes to show how so many of us Christians think that we are righteous, but really we are idolaters. We are full of pride, disobedience, self-deification. So we're like making ourselves our own gods. We're not empty. And I think that's why we see so much of the problems that we see today. We refuse to submit our wills entirely, to stop questioning and simply acquiesce to his will. I think that's why we're seeing so much of what we're seeing in the culture today. So many people are coming to God half full already with expectations of him and what we need him to do and what we need him to prove. I think patriarchs within the church, I think administrators within the church need to toughen up and be more afraid of God than they are afraid of being canceled by the culture for saying, no, you can't bring this stuff in here. No, you cannot. But that's the thing. They're not afraid of God anymore. They're afraid of these people running around in the world who will run to Twitter and cancel them for not allowing them to have their way within the church. The church is like, especially in America, the church is serving a different God. They fear the culture that we're in today more than they do God, and that is a serious problem. And I'm very afraid for these administrators who are allowing this to happen within the church today. I'd like to say more on this topic, but I am all out of time. I have 11 minutes of recording time, and I am at 10:40. So if you guys would like a part 2, do let me know down in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that. Check the description box, please, as I have some things in there for you. And I will catch you in the next video.